The best story of disappeared for 5 years. Here's what really happened. The disappearance. It started like any other Tuesday morning. I had my coffee, scrolled through the news, and headed out to work. I remember the sun was just peeking through the skyline, casting long shadows between the buildings. The streets were humming with the usual early traffic, the smell of bagels from the corner cart lingering in the air. Everything felt ordinary, and that's what makes it so eerie to look back on. Because by the end of the day, I would vanish from my life completely. I worked as a software analyst in Midtown Manhattan. Not exactly thrilling, but it paid the bills. I shared a decent 2-bedroom apartment with my college buddy, Eric, who was more of a brother than a roommate. Life was stable, predictable. If you had asked me that morning, I would have told you I was content, even if I didn't know what contentment really meant. People say it takes a moment to change everything, and for me, that moment came around 11:32 a.m. I was in the middle of a weekly progress meeting when my phone buzzed. I usually ignore calls during meetings, but something about this number, an international code I didn't recognize, made me pause. I stared at it for a few seconds. Then I excused myself, stepped into the hallway, and answered. Hello. There was silence for a beat, and then a shaky voice said, "We found him." I blinked. Sorry, what? Who is this? But there was no response. Just a click, and the call ended. My heart raced. We found him. Who did they find? I stood there in the hallway, trying to piece it together. My hands were sweating. There was no follow-up message. No second call. I went back to my desk in a daze. The meeting was still going, but I wasn't present. That call had stirred something deep in me, something I had buried for years. My older brother, Daniel, had gone missing 8 years ago. He had been 25, a freelance journalist, always chasing dangerous stories in places he shouldn't have been. The last I heard, he was working on a piece about a secretive group operating somewhere in the Balkans. Then, nothing. No contact. No trace. After a year, we held a memorial. My parents never recovered. Neither did I. So when I heard those words, "We found him," I knew, instinctively, they were talking about Daniel. I spent the rest of the day trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe it was just a mistake. But the more I thought about it, the more convinced I became. Someone had found him, and they wanted me to know. That night, I couldn't sleep. I dug through old messages, photos, files. I hadn't looked at any of it in years. The pain was too raw. But now I looked closer. One photo, a blurry image of Daniel in a small cafe, timestamped 6 months before he disappeared, had something strange in the background, a street sign with coordinates etched on it in what looked like a permanent marker. I opened Google Maps. The coordinates led to a tiny village in eastern Romania. Population, under 400. No airport, no hotel listings, just a name, Kalinesti. The next morning, I found an email in my spam folder. Sent from a ProtonMail address. No subject, just a single line, follow the coordinates. He needs you. I sat staring at the screen, my pulse pounding. Was this real? Was I being pulled into something dangerous? Or was this the closure I'd been seeking for nearly a decade? I didn't tell anyone, not Eric, not my parents. I knew if I said it out loud, it would become real, and I wasn't ready for that yet. Within 2 days, I booked a one-way flight to Bucharest. From there, I would figure it out. I quit my job, told Eric the first was going on a last-minute trip to clear my head. He looked concerned, but didn't press. He knew me well enough to sense when something deeper was going on. The morning of my flight, I packed a single backpack. Passport, cash, clothes for a week. I left my phone on the kitchen counter, screen facing down. I didn't want to be tracked. Somehow, I knew that once I boarded that plane, there was no coming back to my old life. As the plane took off, I stared out at the clouds and tried to convince myself I wasn't making the biggest mistake of my life. But somewhere, deep down, I felt something else too, hope. Landing in Bucharest was surreal. The city was foreign but welcoming, chaotic in a charming way. I stayed one night in a tiny hostel before taking a series of buses and eventually hiring a driver to get me to Kalinesti. The deeper we drove into the countryside, the more isolated it became. The roads turned to gravel, then dirt. My cell service dropped completely. The air grew colder, cleaner. By the time we arrived, it was late afternoon. The village looked like it hadn't changed in 100 years. Stone houses, faded wooden fences, people moving slowly, watching curiously as the car rolled by. I stepped out and felt like I had entered another world. The driver left me. The forest. The forest at night is a living thing. It breathes differently in the dark. Each leaf rustles with meaning, each distant crack of a twig feels like a footstep. When I stepped into the woods that night, the world behind me, the inn, the village, my life, seemed to dissolve. I had nothing but a flashlight and a half-charged burner phone I bought in Bucharest. The moonlight filtered through the twisted canopy, casting long, fractured shadows across the path. I wasn't sure where I was going. The note had said only, "Forest. Midnight. Come alone." I checked my watch. 11:58 p.m. I kept walking. At 12:03, I saw it, a faint light, flickering between the trees. Not a flashlight. Fire. I followed it. My pulse thumped against my ribs. Every step felt heavier, more final, and then I reached the clearing. There was a small fire burning at the center, surrounded by stones. Behind it stood a man in a dark green coat. Tall, hooded. I couldn't see his face, but his posture was calm, as if he'd been waiting for me his whole life. He spoke first. "You're Daniel's brother." My throat went dry. "You know Daniel." He nodded. "He's alive." For a moment, the world spun. I almost collapsed. "Alive? Where is he?" I asked, stepping closer. The man held up a hand. "Not yet. You need to understand what he found. What he uncovered. If you go looking for him without knowing, you won't make it far." "What do you mean? What did he find?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a journal. Worn, weathered, the initials DR burned into the leather cover. I took it from him with shaking hands. It was Daniel's. "He left this with us," the man said, "before he went underground." "Who's us?" I asked. The man didn't reply. I flipped open the journal. The pages were filled with notes, coded entries, sketches, newspaper clippings in different languages. One phrase repeated again and again, "Umbra Manus." "What is Umbra Manus?" The man finally removed his hood. He was older than I expected. Late 50s. His eyes were piercing blue, rimmed with fatigue. "It's not a name," he said. "It's a warning. For the next hour, I listened. I barely spoke. He told me that Daniel had discovered something deep in this region, something old. Older than the village, older than the maps, a network of underground ruins, predating the Roman Empire. Tied to a cult that vanished from history centuries ago. They called themselves Umbra Manus, the Shadow Hand, he said. A group that believed in the purification of knowledge. They believed certain truths were too dangerous to share with the world. Daniel had come here looking for a lost manuscript, one he believed was buried in the ruins. A scroll written in a language that had no modern translation. It was said to contain a prophecy, or a curse. And he found it. I asked. He found something. After that, everything changed. He went quiet, disconnected from the world, and then he vanished again. Not because he was lost. Because he didn't want to be found. Why not? The man looked at me with something close to pity. Because what he found is hunting him. I spent the night in the clearing, too afraid to go back. The man, who finally gave me a name, Mihai, kept watch. At dawn, he led me deeper into the forest. "We can't stay in the village anymore," he said. "They watch the roads. They listen." Who? The ones who want the manuscript. They believe Daniel still has it. We moved in silence for hours, following trails only he seemed to recognize. He showed me hidden markers carved into trees, symbols that matched sketches in Daniel's journal. Each one a breadcrumb. By midday, we reached another cabin, smaller than the first. Camouflaged with moss and vines. Inside, it was stocked. Food, water, maps, radios. This was Daniel's last base, Mihai said. I explored every inch of the cabin. Tucked under a floorboard, I found a voice recorder. I hit play. My brother's voice filled the air. "If you're hearing this, I'm either gone, or in deeper than I thought." They're everywhere. The locals don't speak, but they see. And they know. I'm close to the chamber. The manuscript is real, and I think I understand what it's warning us about. There was a long pause, and then, "Don't come looking for me. Not unless you're ready to give up everything." The recording clicked off. I sat on the floor. Numb. My brother was alive, still chasing something no one else believed in. Still risking everything. I made my decision. I'm going after him, I told Mihai. He didn't argue, but he handed me a knife. The days blurred after that. Mihai trained me how to navigate the forest, how to move unseen, how to understand the symbols Daniel left behind. Each one pointed to a different part of the underground system. We ventured out only at night. One evening, we found a hidden entrance, covered in vines, sealed with stone. Mihai placed his hand on the center and whispered something in Romanian. The stone shifted. Inside was darkness, endless. We lit torches and stepped in. The tunnels were older than anything I'd ever seen. The air was thick. Each wall was etched with markings, warnings, ancient prayers. We followed them deeper. In one chamber, we found a mural, faded but still visible, a figure holding a scroll, surrounded by fire. And above him, dark shapes falling from the sky. It's a prophecy, Mihai said, of something returning. Something returning. We weren't alone down there. On our third descent, we heard voices. Not human. Whispers carried on air that didn't move. Lights flickering where no flame had been. Mihai said little, but I saw the fear in his eyes. We're close, he said. And then, we found it. A chamber carved into the rock. A pedestal. And on it, nothing. Gone. He took it, Mihai whispered. He took the manuscript. There was a noise behind us. A soft scrape. We turned, but saw nothing. Then, shadows moving where they shouldn't. We ran. Back in the forest, Mihai told me the truth. They'll come for you now. You've seen too much, touched too much. What do I do? Disappear. That night, Mihai gave me a map and a key. Go north. There's a place. Safe. Remote. Wait there. I'll find Daniel. I never saw Mihai again. I spent the next year off-grid. Living in a remote cabin near the Carpathians. No phone. No internet. Just books, Daniel's journal, and the growing sense that I had stepped into something far bigger than myself. Sometimes I saw lights in the trees. Sometimes I heard voices. I kept a gun nearby. Then one day, a package arrived. No name, no address. Inside, another journal. Daniel's handwriting. I'm alive, it said. But not for long. Don't trust anyone. Umbra Manus was never just a myth. They're real, and they've been waiting. And at the bottom, coordinates. That's when I made my decision. To find him, to end it, to leave my old life behind for good. And that was the beginning of the end. The descent. The coordinates in Daniel's second journal pointed to a stretch of wilderness farther north than I'd ever been. No roads, no names on the map. Just a tiny red dot surrounded by mountains, deep in the heart of the Carpathians. By then, I was used to the silence. The cold, the solitude. But this was different. This wasn't survival. This was pursuit. I left the cabin at dawn, took only what I needed. Daniel's journals, dried food, a compass, the burner phone, a revolver I barely knew how to use, and started walking. The terrain grew harsher with each mile. Thick pine forests, sheer rock cliffs, hidden streams freezing at the edges. I marked my path with small symbols, chalk on trees, tiny stone piles, just in case I needed to retreat. Though I had a feeling retreat wouldn't be an option. By the second night, I found a makeshift campsite, abandoned. Still warm. Someone else was close. I checked the journal again. Daniel's last entry. I'm close. They're watching. If I reach the hollow, it ends. The hollow. Mihai had mentioned it once, before he disappeared. A place of convergence. Where the old ruins met the earth's breath. Where the cult once gathered. Where the manuscript had spoken. I hiked for another day. No signs of life. No sounds of birds. Then I saw it. An opening in the side of a craggy slope, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. A narrow fissure, partially covered in moss and branches. I squeezed through. Darkness swallowed me. Inside, the tunnel widened. I lit a lantern and moved forward, slow and steady. The air was thick, almost wet. The walls were smooth stone, unnatural. Carved. I followed the passage until it opened into a larger chamber. The hollow. A massive underground space, circular, domed. Torches in rusted sconces still clung to the walls, as if someone had been here recently. In the center, a stone platform, inscribed with the same symbols from the mural in the forest. Blood red, sharp, and behind it, Daniel. He was older, gaunt, eyes sunken but burning with clarity. He stood still, arms at his sides, watching me. Hello, brother, he said. I froze. You're alive. For now. I stepped forward, unsure whether to hug him or run. They followed you, he said. Didn't they? I don't know. I came alone. No one comes alone. Not here. He led me to a small alcove at the back of the hollow. There, he had supplies. Maps, sketches, a third journal. He motioned for me to sit. I've been living underground for almost 2 years, he said. Moving between chambers, tunnels, watching, listening. The manuscript, it's not a story. It's a seal. A lock. A lock for what? Something old. Something sleeping. I stared at him. You really believe that? He didn't blink. I've seen it. He opened the third journal and pointed to a sketch, an immense structure buried deep beneath the hollow. A monolith, surrounded by what looked like sarcophagi, each one etched with the same spiral pattern. They're not coffins, he said. They're vessels. I felt the cold seep into my bones. Daniel, what are you trying to do? He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the fear. I'm trying to stop them from waking it. We stayed hidden in the hollow for days. Daniel explained everything he'd learned. The Umbra Manus wasn't a cult in the traditional sense, it was a guardian order, dating back thousands of years. Their purpose was to keep the monolith sealed. But over time, the order fractured. Some wanted to preserve the lock. Others wanted to open it. Why would anyone want to release it? I asked. Because it offers power, he said. Knowledge, control, but at a cost. He showed me old transcriptions, scraps he'd copied from stone tablets. A language not of Earth. A warning translated across generations. The sealed voice speaks only in silence. To hear it is to surrender. To release it is to be consumed. I didn't want to believe. But too much had happened. Too much lined up. On the fifth night, Daniel woke me. They're here. Voices echoed in the tunnels. Real this time. Flashlights. Footsteps. We gathered everything and moved deeper into the cave network. Daniel led me through narrow corridors, past underground lakes and ancient carvings. Until we reached a door. Iron. Sealed with 7 locks. This is it, he said. The seal of Umbra. As we stared, we heard the others catching up. No time. Daniel pulled a pouch from his coat and handed it to me. Inside, a fragment of the manuscript. Warm to the touch. Take it, he said. If they catch us, you run. You take this far away. Bury it. Destroy it. What about you? I have to hold them off. I refused to leave, but then the gunfire started. Someone shouted in a language I didn't know. Daniel pushed me down a side tunnel, sealed it behind me. I ran. I emerged 3 days later in a forest on the other side of the mountains. Exhausted, bloodied, alone. Daniel was gone. I followed his last instructions. Went west, crossed borders, burned my ID, took on a new name. The manuscript fragment remained hidden in my pack. For the next 4 years, I moved from place to place. Off-grid communities, remote farms, underground hostels, always watching my back, always listening for whispers in the dark. I saw them sometimes, in crowds, on empty roads, men in black coats, pale eyes, waiting. I never stayed anywhere more than a few months. I made copies of Daniel's journals, sent them anonymously to researchers, universities. Some disappeared, some ignored me, a few responded, then vanished. The world was quieter, but I knew the seal was weakening. 2 months ago, I got a message. An unlisted email. 4 words. It's starting. Come home. Home. New York. I didn't hesitate. I returned to the city under a different name. Rented a room in Queens. Tried to blend in. The world had moved on. But I hadn't, and neither had they. 3 nights ago, I woke to find a symbol scratched into my door. The spiral. They knew I was back. So now, I'm telling this story. Every detail, every truth. If I vanish again, someone has to know. The manuscript is real. Daniel is alive, somewhere. And the hollow is opening. The awakening. Returning to New York felt like waking into a dream I had long abandoned. Everything was louder, too loud. Lights too bright, people too fast. For the first few days, I stayed in my tiny rented room above a laundromat in Queens, peering through blinds, always expecting to see a shadow detach from the night. The symbol, the spiral, scratched into my door hadn't been a warning. It was a message. They were here, not just in Romania, not just in some ancient cave. They were everywhere, and something had changed. The manuscript fragment I carried felt warmer each night. I stored it inside a thick lead box wrapped in layers of cloth, but it still pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. I tried not to think about it, but I knew what it meant. The seal was weakening. On the 4th day, I received another message. This time, hand-delivered. A torn envelope slid under my door, no postage, no address. Inside, an old photo. Me, Daniel, and Mihai, taken in the forest clearing 2 years earlier. On the back, 2 words, Library Vault. It was enough. I grabbed the box, packed a small bag, and headed out before dawn. I didn't take the subway. Didn't hail a cab. I walked the 60 blocks to the New York Public Library. It was still closed when I arrived, but I didn't care. I waited until the security guard on the west entrance stepped out for a smoke, then slipped past. The main hall echoed with ghostly quiet. I moved like I was being watched, because I was. Cameras in every corner, but more than that, eyes. I could feel them. The vault wasn't on any public map, but Daniel had shown me once, years ago, on a visit to the city. A sublevel rarely accessed, used mostly for documents considered too damaged or too secret to be displayed. I found the access elevator hidden behind a bookshelf marked, Restoration Archives. The panel required a key code. I entered the numbers I remembered from Daniel's notes, 107,319. The door opened. The vault was freezing. Dim lights buzzed overhead as I moved past rows of old shelves, glass cases, and sealed crates. Dust hung in the air like time itself had stopped breathing. I wasn't alone. A figure stepped out from behind a tall stack of archive boxes. Small, hooded, a woman. Her face was pale, angular. Eastern European, maybe. She looked at me with eyes that had seen centuries. "You brought it," she said. I said nothing, but I didn't run. "I'm not here to take it," she continued. "I'm here to warn you." "Who are you?" "My name is irrelevant. I speak for those who failed." "What does that mean?" She reached into her coat and produced a small, folded parchment. On it, a symbol I hadn't seen before, 3 interlocking spirals. The original seal. "They've already begun," she said. "You can't stop them, but you can slow them." Who's they? She didn't answer. Instead, she gestured toward a crate at the end of the room. "In there, you'll find what Daniel couldn't finish." She stepped back into the shadows. Gone. I approached the crate, pried it open. Inside was a stone tablet. Cracked. The same spiral symbol carved into the center. Around it, text, but not any language I knew. Not Latin, not Cyrillic, the same alien script from the caves. Etched at the base, in newer hand, translated. "Use with caution." I pulled the fragment from my lead box. As it neared the tablet, it vibrated. A faint hum filled the room. The symbols on the tablet shifted, glowed faintly. I suddenly understood, not word by word, but meaning. The fragment was a key. Not just to unlock the seal, but to read it. The message was clear. The hollow is not a place. It is a cycle. Every 5 centuries, the door weakens. Every 5 centuries, it chooses a vessel. A vessel. I stumbled backward. No, that couldn't be it. Daniel hadn't just found the seal. He had become it. I left the library before noon, heart racing. The city felt smaller now. Tighter. I felt eyes everywhere. I changed direction every few blocks. At one point, I ducked into a hardware store, bought a crowbar and a hatchet. Just in case. I knew what I had to do. The tablet, the fragment, they had to be returned. Back to the hollow, sealed again. I booked a flight under a fake name. Used cash, left the burner phone behind. Within 36 hours, I was back in Europe. Back in the woods, back to where it all started. The forest had changed. It was colder, quieter. Even the animals had fled. I followed the same path I had taken with Mihai years ago. Found the old cabin, abandoned, ransacked, but someone had left a message scratched into the doorframe, below. Still watching, I found the hollow entrance by moonlight. The vines were gone. The stone cover shattered. The cave breathed like a lung. I entered. Every step echoed. As I reached the central chamber, the one with the platform, I saw it, the monolith. Fully emerged, towering, and in front of it, Daniel. He turned. His eyes were different, black, empty, but he smiled. "You came," he said. "Daniel, what have you done?" I stopped running. Behind him, the monolith pulsed. With each beat, the walls of the chamber seemed to warp, ripple like water. A frequency I couldn't hear, but felt deep in my bones. "The cycle completes," he said. "The vessel awakens." I raised the fragment. "Then let's break it." For a moment, he hesitated. Something in him, still human, flickered. Then he screamed. The monolith erupted in light. Symbols crawled across its surface like insects. I stepped forward, slamming the fragment into the stone. A shockwave knocked me back. The world went white. I woke up outside the hollow. Alone. No sign of Daniel. No monolith. Just stone and silence. The fragment was gone. I wandered the woods for 3 days before I found a road. A logging truck picked me up. I didn't speak. I couldn't. Something had changed. Not just in the forest. In me. I started dreaming in symbols. Seeing patterns. Hearing whispers when no one else could. Was the seal broken? Was the cycle complete? I don't know. But I do know this. The hollow is not gone. It's waiting. And I am the new vessel.